a little bit about him. There's a lot to say about him, so I don't know if I'll be able to cover it all, Dan, but because he's so accomplished. Dan Lohrmann is an award-winning CISO, best-selling author, client advisor, blogger, keynote speaker, mentor over at Presidio. He's an internationally recognized cybersecurity leader, technologist. As a field CISO for public sector, Dan is a trusted advisor for government clients, bringing industry best practice solutions. He is the co-author of Cyber May Day and the Day After, and I know you can find that book. Is that on Amazon? You can find his book on Amazon. He also is the lead Michigan government cybersecurity technology infrastructure teams. He was that from 2002 to 2014. SC Magazine, Chief Security Officer of the Year, Governing Magazine Public Official of the Year, Computer World 100 leader. He's a trusted source of government cybersecurity counsel, advised leaders at the White House, National Governors Association, National Associations of CIOs, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, federal, state government agent, Fortune 500 companies. He's global recognized conference speakers of many IT and cyber topics. I could go on because he has a long list of things that he's accomplished. I met him several years ago, and he has not only been an advocate for our events, he's been on my weekly podcast that I have every week, and Security for All, and he's been a great friend of FutureCon, so we are super excited to have him as our keynote speaker today. He is going to be speaking on cyber predictions for 2023 and beyond. What are they and how can you benefit? So everyone, let's welcome Dan Lohrmann.
Travel around the country and the world, and it's always great to come back and see so many familiar faces and friends. So thank you for coming out today. Really appreciate it. I want to start today by talking about cyber predictions. There's a lot of different topics we can talk about, but I want to really start with the second half of this and convince you why you should care. Why should you care about this topic? And then we're going to dive into the predictions. So I want to hopefully teach you how to fish, and not PHI fish, but but how to learn the benefits of this, and then also how you can really enhance your career by knowing this. I always like to start off with a few great quotes from well-known leaders. And of course, this is Albert Einstein. You may have heard this before. If I had only 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem, 5 minutes finding the solution. So I want to start off with this question for you. And I want to tee this up and really have you think about your own situation. Why should you care about predictions? This is all areas of life. And some of you probably really care a lot about them. Some of you probably think this is a waste of your time. So down here, another quote from a famous person you probably know, Yogi Berra. It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future, right? But you think about predictions, you think about, okay, weather predictions. I do care about that. It's supposed to snow tomorrow. I care about stock market portfolios. You watch CNBC or Bloomberg. You care, where are you going to put your money? Bonds, stocks, interest rates going up, those kinds of things. But you start thinking every area of life has predictions. So how many of you are probably fill out a bracket for the NCAA? Anybody? Raise your hand. A few of you, I'm sure. Any Michigan State fans, Michigan fans, probably thinking about the Big Ten tournament today. So that's certainly one area of life. You think about predictions, sports, betting, whatever. But really it goes a lot deeper than that. And I'm not going to unpack the point of this, except for to dive straight into this question of why should you care about security predictions? As an individual and as a team and as a company, wherever you work, why should you care? And I want to take you back to 2016, true story. In my life, I blog for several magazines. I write for several magazines, Government Technology, CSO Magazine. And back then, I saw this from a friend. He's a friend of mine, but we have a disagreement on this topic. Ira Winkler, many of you probably know Ira. He said this: every year some publication asked me to come up with a list of my top 10 predictions for the security field. And every year I tell them, I might as well just dust off an article I wrote the year earlier with maybe a few buzzwords, a few new technologies added on. What you can generally expect in any given year is more of the same with some slight variations. So that was his view. He's basically saying this is a waste of time. We shouldn't be doing this. I then responded, and I wrote this article, which you can go to and you can read at CSO Magazine. Why are we seeing more security predictions, and why should you care? And I encourage you, if you want to go dive deeper into this, go read it. But there's a lot of reasons why this is more than just hocus pocus, as Ira was saying in his article. What are some of those reasons? Security predictions both reflect and affect society. So people have been making predictions for thousands of years. And the areas of life that you care most about are the areas you're going to see the most predictions in. So, as you start seeing new technologies, even in areas like artificial intelligence. I was talking earlier to some friends here at the table from GM, talking about autonomous vehicles, talking about all the different things going on in different companies around ChatGPT, all kinds of different topics. If you really care about something, what we tell our kids to do even in school is a scientific method, is like, what do you predict will happen next? You can learn this way, right? Predictions really build trust in the industry. What do I mean by that? If you're listening to someone in the hall next door, if you're listening in the industry, who do you listen to? We're going to come back to this theme at the end. Who are you going to listen to? Who are you going to follow? If you believe their roadmap to solve the problem you're trying to solve in any area of life, but certainly in security, then what does that mean? It means that they're going to have the solution too. So if I understand the problem, I understand what's going to happen next. We all want to be the Wayne Gretzky thing, right? We want to go to where the puck is going to be. So benefits, you can gain industry knowledge, understand overall trends, expand your horizons beyond one stovepipe or topic. Use the free advice, direction, and insights and annual reports provided by many. Some of you, I'm sure, use Gartner and Forrester. I love Gartner and Forrester. They're also very expensive, and there's others. And they'll charge hundreds, maybe thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to have seats to get their predictions and their analysis. Where guess what? Every year, most of the security companies, and I'm going to go through this list in a few minutes, every year they put together reports. And not just kind of like, I think it might snow this winter in Michigan. That's pretty useless, right? But really specific predictions about what's going on, connecting the dots on trends. And we're going to talk about that report in a few moments. But I want to take you back and get a little bit more personal about this and also talk about in my career, my brother told me, how did I get into cybersecurity? People often ask me that. I started at the National Security Agency in the mid-'80s. And my brother Steve was a salesman. He worked for Silicon Graphics, Burroughs, Data General, lots of companies. And he said, get into computers, because he saw the trends happening. And that because my brother saw that, it affected my whole career, what I did with my career, how I joined the National Security Agency. But I want to get even more specific. I want to take you back to a true story, take you back to 2006. How many of you have heard the term cyberstorm before? Cyberstorm, a few of you. So DHS, Department of Homeland Security, does a exercise every couple years, every 2 years, called Cyberstorm. There was Cyberstorm 1, 2, 3, 4. I think they're up to like 6 now. One somewhere along the way, almost like Microsoft, they renamed it like Cyberstorm 2020. But then now it's, they're back to like Cyberstorm 7, Cyberstorm 8. But this was the first Cyberstorm, okay? I was the CSO in the state of Michigan, CISO, and we were one of 4 states that were invited to speak, to be involved. It's like a tabletop exercise. Anybody do a tabletop exercise at your company? Raise your hand. Okay, this is like a massive exercise. It included 4 states. It also included most of the federal agencies and other countries. So England was involved, France, Australia, New Zealand. And in this exercise, this was a week-long exercise. It started on Monday morning. We ended on Friday with a hot wash. In this exercise, all kinds of bad things happened. Many of you would say it's probably over the top. But remember, this was 5 years after 9/11. So the first day of this exercise, literally, they blew up the data center. Gone. No data center. Then they one by one, things were hacked. We were just basically getting our butts kicked for 3 days. Everything we tried to do didn't work. It was bad, and worse. And it's like, these people were going like, bang, bang, you're dead, just give up right now, right? This was a really, really heavy-duty exercise. But we got to Thursday afternoon. We're about ready to wrap up the whole thing. They said, there's one more thing you have to do. And we said, okay. So they said, we got to get a Bull mainframe. We got to get, how many remember Bull? The mainframe company. That was the mainframe we ran our payroll on in state government. They said, we got to get that back up because we got to be able to pay the employees. We got to, and they had blown one of them up and they had hacked the other one. So we had no Bull mainframe. But we were told in the exercise, in the drill, that there was one Bull mainframe left in the world. And it was in, and so they literally were going through the exercise, basically the playbook. And we pick up this red phone that they had provided. And we literally call Bull headquarters in France. And I'm not going to try and imitate a French accent because I'm not that good at that. Actually, I'm going to France in a couple of weeks, so I've got to kind of work on my French a little bit. But we picked up the phone. They said, yes, this is Bull headquarters. How can we help you? I said, well, we want to buy a Bull mainframe. And they said, great. And we knew, by the way, that it cost about $11 million. That was what we paid for this. So we said, okay, great. We have one left, and we'd be happy to sell this to you. So we said, okay, great. We'd like to buy it. And they said, okay, that'll be, we're ready to pay you $11 million for this, or maybe we think, okay, service charge 12 or something. They said, that'll be $45 million, please. We said, $45 million? I remember putting my hand over the phone. My whole team was in the room, this big command center we had in state government at the time, and I said, they want $45 million for the Bull mainframe. And everyone's like screaming, that's impossible, we can't believe it, that's extortion. And everyone's yelling and screaming. We ended up negotiating back and forth. We finally ended up buying this Bull mainframe, this exercise. Didn't really buy it, but an exercise for $26 million. We negotiated back and forth. We negotiated this. And then it ended. And somebody said, what does this have to do with predictions or anything? I'm just saying, so the next day we did a hot wash. And we said, hot wash, how many of you do hot washes with your tabletops? Anybody? This is like an after-action exercise where everybody gets together and you say what went well, what didn't go well in the exercise, what would you do differently, what was good, bad, ugly, how can we be ready for the next one? And one of our lead people, Joel Weaver, who now works for CrowdStrike, he's very, very good guy, very smart. And he said, Dan, that whole thing about the Bull mainframe, that was extortion. That would never happen with a cyber attack. Come on. I mean, that was like, and somebody said, yeah, ransomware. Everyone's laughing in the room. Like, that would never happen. Really? So why did I tell you that story? This was 2006, people. 2006. This was 7 years before ransomware showed up as a top 10 threat in 2013 by Gartner and Forrester and all the big boys. A few years later, we know 2019, 2020, 21. We're going to look at that in a minute. What I'm telling you is this. By planning really well, your exercises, your tabletops you do in your companies, your strategies, your what-if scenarios, CISA, they weren't called CISA back then, the Department of Homeland Security, saw this really a decade before ransomware got hot. So what I'm telling you is this. We saw a trend, and it was actually showed up in the tabletop exercise in 2006. 2013, ransomware really started to blip on the map, and now it's like the #1 challenge we're facing globally, right? In 2023 and the last few years. So my point is this. You can actually learn from your tabletops, from your exercises, from your scenarios, and it can actually affect how you do things and prepare in the future. So what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to walk you through some of the top industry themes, some of the best company prediction reports. Why? Why are they the best? Some specific details. Somebody say, I want some specific predictions. We're going to walk through some of those. What's missing? What's not missing? Prediction value, we talked about that already. We're going to have some Q&A at the end, some question and answer, the last 10 or 15 minutes. And then I want to start off right now quickly, give you a quick 5-minute run through, because I really, really believe that to really understand the future, you got to go back and you got to look at history. Many of you have heard those quotes. If you fail to learn from history, right? Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it, Winston Churchill. So we can learn by connecting the dots. We all remember, maybe some of you in this room don't remember, this 9/11, the big topic back in 2002, was like, why didn't we connect the dots? Why didn't we know that these people were going to fly this plane into a building? They didn't want to learn how to take off and land. They just wanted to learn how to fly the plane in the air. Nobody connected those dots. So how can we connect the dots today? How can we learn? How can it affect us? I'm going to quickly walk you through a quick timeline of some of the top trends that we've seen over the last decade. And I want to start quickly with 2014. 2014, I started chronicling these and putting these together in a GovTech blog every year. What was the top message each year? 2014 was the year cyber danger doubled. Why do I say that? If you look at the metrics, almost everything doubled in 2014. It was scary. The number of attacks, the number of money spent on it, the number of insurance policies, the number of people in the industry. You can pick almost any one of your top metrics, they all doubled that year. So we started seeing an explosion in 2014. And then 2015, it's not going forward here. Looks like it's locked up here, guys. Let's see something. Try this. And technology always works, right? Let's see if we go back here. Let's see if we, yeah. So 2015 was the year that data breaches became intimate. Why did I say that? It wasn't just a big Ashley Madison breach, that was it. But it wasn't just about money. It was also about your personal information, your family, social media, lots of other things started showing up. 2016, the year hackers stole the show with the cause, so you started seeing more hacktivism showing up. And we talk about the election, and of course the 2016 election, and that became a hot topic. 2017 was the year we started seeing, I call it the year that hurricanes devastated land, data, and trust. We had all those hurricanes, but we also had Equifax was hacked. A lot of big financial hacks happened in 2017. 2018, privacy took center stage. That was GDPR, was passed in Europe. We started really seeing more and more stories around privacy. The year privacy got real was a headline from CSO magazine. Facebook's privacy scandal came out that year. Then 2019, 2021, ransomware became center stage. The year ransomware targeted state and local governments. 2020, the year COVID crisis brought a cyber pandemic. 2021, the year ransomware disrupted infrastructure. And that was the year, of course, we started seeing things like the Colonial Pipeline and JBS Meats and the headlines around that. And then 2022, last year, we had the shock. Nobody predicted what was going to happen in Ukraine. It certainly is, if you will, industry globally, you see, it was the year that Ukraine war shocked the world. And why is this important? We're going to come to this at the end. Because there are a lot of assumptions you're making at your company right now. There are assumptions you're making in your cyber program. There are assumptions you're making about where things are going to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Do you think about scenarios around, we'll walk through some of those in a little bit, but what if? How many of you predicted the Ukraine war in 2020? Anybody? How many of you predicted COVID in 2019? One? You predicted it. That's great. I love to see the article. With a 2019 date on it. Show it to me. Seriously, after the link, I love to see it. But again, these major events in history can shape the future dramatically. We've seen that with COVID. We've seen that with the Ukraine war. We've seen that with other things. Questions like, will China go into Taiwan? There's lots of real fundamental questions that are going to shape the future of our industry that we need to be aware of. So let's dive into this. 2023, of course, another year we have tons and tons of predictions. Let me just say a few things about these reports. I've been doing this for more than a decade. I actually started doing this informally in about 2008. Just very, very impressed with the amount of work that has gone into these reports by these vendors. And what do I mean by that? Think about the top 23 security predictions for 2023. By the way, you can just type in Dan Lohrmann and it'll pop up at predictions. Just type in security predictions, actually. I'll show you in a minute. It'll pop up. It's number 1 and number 2 globally. I have about 187 million pages. But what I'm doing is these are not Dan Lohrmann's predictions. These are not for me. These are the predictions of the top vendors in the industry. What are they saying is going to happen? And by the way, if you pull all of them together, you start seeing, we keep saying predictions, but the words often forecast, trend, roadmap. A lot of people, it's funny, some companies will say, we don't do predictions. These are our trends. I mean, really it's the same thing. You just swap out the words, almost the same thing. But basically, you can go and read the full report and they list all the different companies in there. What are some of the rolled up, before I start going into individual reports, what are some of the rolled up trends that we're seeing that cut across literally hundreds of vendor reports? And I'm going to show you in a minute the differences. Some vendors literally have a reference for it. They have Trend Micro, the #1 report, has hundreds of references for why they're making the predictions that they are. This isn't just guessing. They really are connecting the dots. Number one, I'm just going to walk through these pretty quickly. And these kind of give you an overview, and then we'll dive into more specifics. But cyber insurance. Cyber insurance there are almost, I'd say 80% of the vendors have something to say about cyber insurance from different extremes. Again, not all these people agree with each other, but most people say, last year, by and large, and as I travel around, I'm hearing this from a lot of state and local governments, I'm hearing this from a lot of private sector companies, by and large, the premiums doubled and the coverage got dropped by 50%. So you're basically seeing about 4x increase in the price of cyber insurance. Many states have now said that they're just going to go ahead and self-insure because they can't afford it anymore. They just can't even get into the market. But for those who do continue in cyber insurance, and there's a lot of different predictions out there around that, what you're seeing is some trends, and companies are getting out of it altogether. Others are saying, we're not even going to give you a policy if you can't prove that you've done all these lists of things. Where it used to be maybe a one-page sheet and people would fill it out in about 10 or 15 minutes, now I'm hearing CISOs say they have their whole team taking a week to complete it. Some insurance companies are now coming in, you're going to see more and more of this, where they're actually doing tests against your network, almost like the auditors, to make sure that you actually are doing what you're saying before they give you a policy. So more and more trends around cyber insurance. It's going to be, many people think it's going to be evolving and be radically different. Another thing that just came out, I'm not really going to talk a lot about this, but how many of you saw the new strategy that just came out from the federal government? Anybody read about that this week? Highly recommend you go read that from the Biden administration. Interesting, they're talking about the federal government possibly underwriting and being the insurer of last resort, if you will, almost like a Lloyd's of London for cyber insurance for the nation. That could be a real game changer. That's in the strategy, but we're talking about new laws, new things that might happen around cyber insurance. But cyber insurance is a top topic with almost all the companies. We could talk a lot more specifics in a few minutes. More nation-state cyber attacks based on lessons learned from the Ukrainian war. Now, some of you may say, Dan, there's a lot, again, back to my friend Ira Winkler's comments, a lot of these are kind of common sense. But when you dig deeper, these strategies that are showing up in Ukraine, that are showing up at NATO country attacks, that are showing up around the world between Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and the attacks that they're doing with the Ukrainian conflict are starting to show up in companies, in governments near you, in lots of others. And I can't say everything that I know, but I'll tell you, a lot of it is not even in the press. It's more than you think because, quite frankly, some of it's classified. But more and more, study Ukraine war, study the tactics, because that's probably going to be showing up at a company near you. Growing trouble with multi-factor authentication. How many of you do multi-factor for all of your systems? Raise your hand. All your systems. Your hand's real high. I got a couple of you, maybe a third. Just when you thought you're finally getting the multi-factor, that whole world is changing. Attacks against, the texting and moving more and more to apps that can be identifiers and that whole market around multi-factor. The bad guys have taken note. Leave it at that. And there's a lot of examples of this from Kaspersky and others. You're seeing more and more attacks against multi-factor authentication. So this is a hot area. New attacks against vehicles and drones. I know some people here from GM I talked to earlier, other companies here, obviously in the auto industry. a lot of discussion about IoT and what that means. Social media attacks surge, including the use of targeted deepfakes. Now, this is an interesting one, I'll say. Deepfakes, again, these are trends, a lot of different trends, specifics, not so specific. It's looking more and more real all the time. So we're seeing, this has been a prediction for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years at least. But the deepfakes will be used in new ways to attack your enterprise. So you think it's coming from your boss. You think it's coming from your CEO. You think messages are coming from your head of communications. And in reality, it's not them. And not just the picture or the video, but in many cases, it's voice. It's, a voicemail on your iPhone shows up. And it sounds like your boss. I want you to go do X, Y, Z. But maybe it's not really your boss. Anyone have an attack like that against them yet? Anybody? No? Again, if you believe that, pretty significant, right? Could change your day pretty dramatically. Don't go to that FutureCon conference today. I want you to show up at wherever, whatever it might be. So again, deepfakes, big area. Public cloud computing, digital transformation grows along with cyber threats. So we're seeing a surge. Presidio, company I work for, does a lot in digital transformation. We're seeing a surge in use of cloud. We're seeing a surge in use of people saying, I just don't have the people anymore. I can't run my own data center. I want to put more and more in the cloud. But the number of threats is skyrocketing as well. Again, when you see these trends, you're also seeing the bad guys are seeing the same ones, and the attacks are listed again in these reports. More critical infrastructure attacks impact society. So we haven't seen a big cyber 9/11 like some people thought. There have been attacks against some critical infrastructure. By the way, last year we saw, again, looking at history, many countries had devastating cyber attacks in NATO, South America, Central America. Really brought down governments for in some cases months, because they brought down critical infrastructure. Hacktivism grows into new areas and becomes a bigger problem. One of the specific comments made by one of the big vendors is that it's not just about money anymore, it's also about brand. I found this interesting comment in one of the reports was that if you're a large international company with a big brand name, and I'm not going to start naming brands, but just think of the Fortune 500 companies out there, in many cases, the brand damage is worth more than the actual cost of paying a ransom. So if they can make your brand seem vulnerable in any number of ways, and again, there are examples in these reports of how they may do that, it can actually be more effective. So the brand damage. Also, some people who have other social media things, a cause, whatever, hacking for a cause is another name for hacktivism. So they have a cause and they want to see their cause furthered. Right now we're seeing protests in Paris around retirement age. We're seeing protests in Israel around changes to their laws. We're seeing protests. Whatever the protest is, if I can make that exponentially more by doing more things online and accelerating that and getting the word out, all the better for my cause. So hacktivism is a huge area. Enterprises veering away from endpoint solutions, moving more towards siloed solutions and moving more towards, actually that's a typo there. It's more siloed solutions, more people moving more towards platforms. So the idea, hearing this a lot from CISOs, I don't want 50, if I have 50 tools, I want to get to 25. If I have 100 tools, I want to get to 50. If I've got 200 tools, God forbid, got 200 cyber tools, I need to get to 100. Whatever it is, divide by 2 because I have too many tools. It's too complex. Can't deal with all of this. So I need to get the number of tools down. That's not talking here about endpoint like your mobile device. Endpoints are really important and endpoint platforms are really important. So getting towards single solution or stovepipe solutions. Ransomware will be back in new, more dangerous forms, and then more attacks against non-traditional technology. So from cars to toys to smart cities. We used to always say when I was CISO in the state of Michigan, it's like we used to, the week we hated the most was like the first week of January. Whatever people got for their Christmas presents, they brought them into work. And they plug them into the network, and hey, it's, my work network is faster than my home network. So people bring stuff in and plug it in and try it out. Didn't want to do that at home, interestingly enough. They wanted to do it at work. But more and more, toys are no longer just games. I mean, literally, it's serious stuff. So keeping that in mind. So I want to dive in now. Back up. Why is a report a good report? So I'm going to walk you through, go about another 10, 15 minutes here, and we'll keep going, fly through some of these, and get to some questions. How do you rank the reports? So people ask me, well, I'm going to go through a ranking, the top 5, some of these reports. And again, I'm looking for different things. I'm looking for track record over years, the clarity of the report, of the items, statements backed up with good references. So if you don't believe something, you don't believe there's a trend, you say, well, I don't see the dots, I don't see how you're connecting the dots to the future. Can you link to good references? Uniqueness or consistency, connecting the trending dots. Storyboard, not just one-off ideas. Specificity of the details. The presentation is really important. Like many of you, if you brief your boards at your company or you brief your management, it's not just that you may be the smartest cyber guy at your company or your government, and you're really smart and you know your stuff. But if you can't present in front of the boss, you're probably not going to present in front of the board. Right? So how do you communicate it? Many of these companies do it with websites, with really PDFs, with YouTube videos. They get their points across really, really well, and it's clear what they're talking about. Ability to use actionable intelligence, who is engaged, practical links, and more details. The other thing I do with all of these rankings I'm going to show you right now, it's all free. So in case you're thinking, I'm selling Gartner, I'm selling Presidio, I'm selling Forrester, no. All of this is available free. So you can go out and you can read all of this. It's out there. And honestly, people, it's really important. I mean, I do this every December. You learn so much. Whether you agree or disagree with it, it forces you to think. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, why? Here's the 12 reasons they list why they think it's going to happen. Why do you think it's not going to happen? Are you sure? What if it does? Do you have a scenario for that? Are you ready for that as a company? Et cetera. And by the way, if the top 10 vendors are all saying something's going to happen, pay attention. Pay attention. Because a lot of them will not tell you they've got people in the dark web doing the work. And they're right along there. I come from NSA, right? I know. You don't know what you don't know. A lot of these people have teams that are actually out there with the bad guys that are really good guys that are implanted into these teams. I will tell you that, like I said, in case you're wondering, Dan, this is kind of random where this is coming from. You go out there, type in security predictions, and you'll see that it gets top billing on Google. Out of 187 million, it's 1 and 2, part 1 and part 2. So this is getting a lot of attention in the industry. Okay, number 1, let's talk through these. Almost every year, Trend Micro. Again, I'm not talking about whether you like their technology or not. They put together a heck of a report. They have a great team. They know what they're doing. It's called Future Tense. They always list predictions. I think they've been number 1 the last 4 years. Read the Trend Micro prediction report. Again, aren't individual predictions. These are 120 pages of backup material on why they think these trends are hot. So things like ransomware business models will become a bigger avenue for data theft and blackmail. Inconsistent applications of cloud technology will hurt enterprises as adoption of new tools increase. So you say, Dan, you haven't told me anything I don't already know. I mean, people hack the cloud because you have a bad configuration. But what are the specific details under that? We don't have time today to walk you through. We could spend the next 15 minutes just talking about number 2 under this point. But go to the each of these have 2 pages of these are the specific things that we're seeing as trends in each of these items. And so you can go and, again, I'm trying to show you how you can do this. Enterprise perimeter will expand into homes. It's pretty much happening already as users become more comfortable in a hybrid work environment. Business email compromise and deepfakes will take new forms. The hype surrounding digital novelties like NFTs and metaverse will keep waning, but blockchain technology, which is built on, will be where the real action is. Attackers will further capitalize on vulnerabilities and intrude through overlooked attack surfaces like open source software. Industrial entities will top off their tech stack but struggle to keep up with staff shortages and vertical regulations. Enterprises will veer away from point solutions and approach to cybersecurity. So again, I was talking endpoint is point solution. The word end should not have been in that earlier slide. But WatchGuard, a lot of focus here on insurers. I think WatchGuards, they always are kind of a smaller company, but they have great reports. They're very funny. If you like funny, go watch these, and they got a series of videos. I'm not going to show you a couple of the videos now for time purposes, but WatchGuard does a really great job of making this fun, keeping it interesting, especially over the holidays. They won the award. We're going to get to the awards at the end, but a novel robo-taxi hack will result in a dazed and confused AI car. I like that. So they have very specific predictions as well as more general ones. The first big metaverse hack affects a business through new productivity use cases. Again, they walk you through each of these. Kaspersky. Some of you are wondering, why would Kaspersky be on this list? Yes, I know Kaspersky is a Russian company. Yes, I know that they're banned in a lot of enterprises. But they also have a lot of cybersecurity in most parts of the world, minus the United States. But they're still pretty big in the United States as well. But they do a great job of laying out what they see the trends are. So, right, you want to get different perspectives from different groups. They have some very specific action. The next WannaCry will come out. Mail servers become priority targets. APT targeting turns towards satellites, technology producers, and operators. Hack and leak is the new black and bleak. Like that. More APT groups will move from Cobalt Strike to other alternatives. SIGINT delivered malware. How many of you know what SIGINT is? Signals intelligence? If that happens, that'll be pretty scary. Drone hacking. Again, and they have details behind each of these, so highly encourage you to do that. Mandiant always does a great report. I think they've dropped a little bit a few years ago. Kevin Mandia, who I know fairly well. Kevin, they got bought by Google last year, for those who don't know that. So this was now a Google report. But he used to put out a 5-page letter to the industry every December. And I love even going back reading those, because most of the things that Kevin saw as what's going to happen every year were really, really interesting. And I loved his kind of like, some of these stock pickers, write their 5-page letter at the end of the year, what's going to happen next, and why you should put your money here or there, bond stocks, whatever, cash. I mean, he would talk about the future. So read Kevin Mandia's overviews. But more attacks by actors not associated with nation states or organized groups that are motivated more by bragging rights, I mentioned that earlier, than actual financial gain. More extortion attacks, the possibility that Europe will overtake the United States as the main target for ransomware. Destructive attacks from the big four: Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Fortinet is number 5. Not going to walk through all of these, but new crime as a service offerings, money laundering gets a boost from automation. Virtual cities welcome a new wave of cybercrime. Wipeout, wiper malware will surge. Wild West of Web 3, and the Q-Day preparation. So quantum computing starts showing up. How many of you are even thinking about quantum algorithms at your company? Anybody? A couple people? Big area. When Q-Day comes, we're all going to be scrambling, because it's not on the list of most top companies. It's not even on the top 10. But like ChatGPT, when it shows up, it's going to show up big. So be ready for that. I'm not going to walk through all the other reports. These are the other top 23. We have some honorable mentions. Get you copies. If you come and talk to me afterwards, I'll get me your email. I'll get you a copy of the slides. But go to the website. You can go to the GovTech. You can read all of these reports. They're all really good reports. What are some of the awards? Again, I mentioned Trend Micro, most creative. WatchGuard's most creative. Trend Micro had the best overall report. Least reported, but most likely prediction, Kaspersky. The entire list titled Advanced Threat APT Predictions for 2023. 2 items especially: mail servers become priority targets. The next WannaCry will hit. Scariest was Mandiant, which is now part of Google. Destructive attacks, information operations, and other aggression from the big four: Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. He details what he expects to see from every one of those countries. And most trouble coming for MFA. I am not saying you shouldn't be doing MFA if you're still doing password alone. MFA is way better than I'm a big advocate of MFA, so be clear. This isn't Dan Lohrmann saying this. This is the vendors saying this, that the attackers are starting to come after MFA. Final thoughts, what's missing? And then I'm going to go through a couple quick slides and take some questions. So last year, nobody predicted the Ukraine war would take over. It's amazing when you've got literally hundreds of vendor reports, thousands and thousands of predictions, and they miss some of the biggest things. Because the number one story this year was the Ukraine war and how that impacted every area of cybersecurity. And understanding that, so what are we missing this year? I mean, we're already in March. Clearly we're a couple months in now, but cyber warfare getting real. Great article by Wired Magazine and talking about how that impacts our jobs. But they often forget and they miss big, attacks against the G7 meeting, attacks against the United Nations, big sporting events, World Cup, soccer, the Olympics. There's always some big event coming up. Will they be hacked? Will there be something that'll grab the headlines? I rarely see any predictions around that. A lot of predictions, I didn't mention all of them, but a lot of predictions at a deeper level in your individual industry. So some of these companies break it down by industry. For example, state and local government. There's a lot of grant dollars in state and local government. I spend a lot of my time there. There's also a lot of talk about regulations. We're going to see more and more regulations. They were all in the prediction reports. Guess what? It already has happened because the feds have come out with their strategy, and they're saying the industries that are critical, that don't have regulations, we're going to start regulating them. So that's literally in there. We're seeing more and more regulations. What about longer term? Some of you were saying, Dan, these are very specific. What do you see longer term? There's a lot of reports out that go out to 2030. 7 trends that could shape the future. This is from the World Economic Forum. I'll quickly run through these, but progress in cybersecurity, but access must be widened. Worsening crisis and trust online. Why do you even care about some of these? Let me stop for a moment. Why you should care? I have an article. I don't post it anymore because it's embarrassing for the individuals involved, but literally in 2010, they said by the year 2020, or certainly by 2023, where we're at today, we won't need dedicated cyber teams anymore. This was a prediction. Major magazine. How would they say that? It says, because it's going to be built in. Software is going to, all code will be built securely. All deployments will be secure. Everybody will, it'll just be like clean water. Everybody will have it all the time. And just, we won't need, it'll just be a part of technology and it's all going to go away. Now, had you believed that, not only would that impact your company and maybe your team, it might impact you personally. I didn't believe it. I think cybersecurity is going to get worse in the next 10 years. And guess what? It has, and it's actually helped my career. So it does get personal. It gets personal. I mean, it's like if you believe some of these things, you may make a bet with your career. You want to say, I want to, artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. If I think those two things are going to be hot in 5 years, maybe I want to go get a certification. Maybe I want to go get a master's degree. Maybe I want to go get a doctor's degree. If I think it's all going to go away, and I don't think AI is overblown and cybersecurity is not going to happen in 2030, that's going to change your career decisions. It does get really personal for me. I think for you too, because we're in this industry. I'm speaking to the industry now. Double-edged sword of AI and MI technologies. Again, a lot of talk about ChatGPT, where that's going with cyber, hackers using it, regulatory experiments and the future of privacy, metaverse uncertainty, sovereignty, and the shifting power dynamics. Some of you saying, Dan, these are very high level. I agree. Go to these reports. Go get these headlines. Go read 7 trends that could shape the future of cybersecurity. This is a multi-page research project that you can go read the details on. This is actually, I didn't get a chance to change this. This should be 2050.earth. 2050.earth. You want to see some really interesting predictions? This is Kaspersky does this. It's not a malware site. You can go. It's not 250.earth. So go to 2050.earth. You want to do this on your own time sometime, or go out there. Look at some of the things in different areas of life and what they're predicting about AI in the future. What will the future look like? Again, they may be right, they may be wrong, but they're kind of making predictions around cybersecurity. They're saying the human factor will go away. Now, I don't believe that. I always think it's about people, process, and technology, and I think I come from a security awareness company before I joined Presidio. Many of you know that. I think the human factor will be central because I don't care how secure you make something, if you can manipulate it, just like watch 007 movies, right? If you can just somehow get in there and change how people are doing things or change the access or somehow somebody else, makes, reconfigures things or the process changes, you can change security. I don't believe you're ever going to create the perfect hack-proof system if it's connectivity there, because you're always going to have a human factor. Now, can we do better? Absolutely. So I want to leave you with this and then open up for questions. What time we got? It's almost 1:45. Different opinions. So taking this way back up to the top, do you think we will have a major global cyber war in the next 5 years? I'm not asking you to answer, just theoretically. We can talk about this in the Q&A if you want. I mean, do you think China's going into Taiwan? That could change the world as we know it. Just saying. Ukraine, Russia, change the world as we know it. Do you think there will be a cyber 9/11? Do you think there will be... Now, again, I'm not trying to be fear-mongering. Because, Dan, this is FUD. I don't like FUD. Look, I get it. I was there in 2011 with Janet Napolitano. I was the CISO for the state of Michigan with Governor Rick Snyder, standing on the stage, right across, sitting there, and I spoke right before and after. Janet Napolitano, Secretary of Homeland Security, said, all the best intelligence tells us there'll be an attack bigger than 9/11 and bigger than Cyber Pearl Harbor within 3 years. That was in October 2011. Thank God it did not happen. But she was making a prediction based on the best intelligence at the time. Thankfully, that has not happened. There are people making that same prediction today. They're usually not saying, will it happen in 2023? I don't know. Another thing to keep in mind with these predictions, some of you say, well, Dad, they got it wrong. But maybe they got the trend wrong. Maybe it happens next January. Maybe it doesn't happen in 23. Maybe it happens in 24. But if you really believe something is coming, it affects your predictions, right? So if you say, I know these dots are all connecting, I know yada, 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 just like you do with stocks. I don't know what's going to happen today or tomorrow, but I believe we're heading into a bear market or a bull market for these reasons. It's going to affect how you invest, right? Same thing with cybersecurity. So do you think there's going to be a major, that's just one example. Maybe there's other things in your business that are forks in the road. And how can you deal with this? I'll tell you, I don't know the answer to these questions. But you need to make a decision because in your company, that's what we call scenario-based planning. What's scenario-based planning? It's if this happens, we're going to do this. If that happens, we're going to do that. How do you prepare for a ransomware attack? That's scenario-based planning. We're hoping it doesn't happen. But if it does, this is where Chris is going to go. This is where Dan's going to go. This is where Frank's going to go. This is where Sarah and Mary are going to go. And I hope you're not on vacation, right? No. That's another presentation for another day. I have a whole talk on that. So this is where I'm leaving you, and I'm opening up for maybe 10 minutes of Q&A. Who will you watch? Who will you listen to? How will you take action? That's where I want to leave you. Who will you watch? Who will you listen to? How will you take action? Every one of you, I maintain, I'm going to go one step further than what I said earlier. Not only am I trying to convince you that this is important, that you think about this, that you read these reports, that you understand whatever area of predictions that you care most about in your specific job or company or industry. I argue that you're doing this whether you know it or not. You are making a decision when you sit down in the chair. Will this chair hold me up? I'm predicting yes. I'm going to go ahead and sit down. I'm going to eat lunch. I'm going to drive home today. I'm going to get on the highway. I'm going to go this way, not that way. Why? Because some app told you that this way is blocked and that way is not, so I'm going to go this way. Take it out further. What do you think is going to happen around various scenarios and various trends in any of these technical areas? It impacts your job. It impacts your future. It impacts how you do what you do. So who are you going to watch? Who are you going to listen to? How are you going to take action? And if you don't say, I'm not going to do any of this, Dan, I'm just going to walk out of here and ignore all of it, that's not going to change the future. The question is, will you be ready when different scenarios happen? Okay, with that, I'm going to take some questions. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. We got to do the mic because we have people online that are watching this. So please use the mic when you have a question. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So thank you, Dan, for this presentation, right? And there's a lot of reading. I read some of that stuff, and that's one of the things. It takes so long. But I'm going to ask you a question about the prediction, and then if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you about something that, because your influence and your connections.
Sure. Please.
So one thing I didn't see in the predictions is about digital currency, bitcoins or whatever stuff.
Yep.
If you overlay, I'm going to be bold and make a prediction. Next 5 years, there will be governments that will ban digital currency, and then that will drive ransomware thing down.
Yep.
So you do the research on that, and let's see what happens in 5 years.
Can I comment on that?
Please, yeah.
There were quite a few cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and I'm not just talking about what the price of Bitcoin is going to be. That's a whole nother level of discussion. But just digital currencies, I will tell you there were quite a few predictions from, again, I read hundreds of prediction reports around currencies, digital currencies this year. But it was much bigger last year. Interestingly enough, guess what? What happened? Exactly. Some of you just went like this. The price of Bitcoin dropped by, it's like for some reason, and so we are influenced by these conditions, right? Other people say, no, it's going back to, it's going back to $100,000 per Bitcoin. Or, again, I'm not just talking about speculation here. But a lot of the predictions were like attacks against those platforms. So from a cybersecurity perspective, that does show up in a lot of these reports and say that you're going to see, whether you have your home wallet, whether you have your own, how are you protecting the Bitcoin that you own? And it did not show up in the top 11. I will tell you, last year it was in the top. It was like in the top 5. There was a lot about cryptocurrencies, crypto platforms, crypto wallets, attacking crypto wallets. And I don't know if it's just because, some of these things ebb and flow, about like stock prices, but it was less. Again, that's why I also think it's important that you don't just do this 1 year. You got to do this, year in, year out. In 2022, there were a lot more predictions around that area.
Thank you. So my second part of the question is, I think we are addicted to cheap. I think that's what some of the reasons I believe. In Clinton administration, there was a router in the White House that was made in China,
yep.
and all that stuff.
Yep.
If I have a TV, and I'm just gonna, camouflage. If I have a TV in my living room made in North Korea, I don't know, hurt anybody's feelings. And if that TV is listening to me all the time, recording all the stuff, and sending DNS
yep.
packages back
yep.
over there,
yep.
how secure am I gonna be in my room, right?
Yep.
So we gotta have some regulations. We gotta have something that about hardware and software, sourcing hardware and software and what location it's coming from.
Yep.
Without that, I think, we're gonna be chasing this stuff, right? So, because of your influence, I think, maybe think about some of this stuff in general.
So let me comment on that. And I agree with you 100%. I would just say 2 more things to that. So if you read the report that just came out, many of you remember Chris DeRusha. Chris DeRusha was our CISO here for the state of Michigan. He is now the federal CISO, working for the Biden administration out of the White House. He had a big piece in this as well. So they came out, read the national strategy, the new national strategy. The last one that came out was 4 years ago, actually almost 5 years ago under Donald Trump. The Biden administration national strategy has a whole section on that very point. That it's not first to market, it's secure to market. They're trying to say we got to change the culture that rewards first to market rather than secure to market. And I have so many stories. I'll tell you one quick story for the benefit of the audience. I agree. I went to an IoT conference before COVID, so like 2019, 2018 timeframe. And I talked to all these different people, and IoT devices, some really cool little robots that you can control with your smartphone, and this and that, and all these cool little, I call them Christmas presents, but all these fun things. They're all IoT devices for people's homes at the IoT World out in San Francisco. And I would go to these vendors, and they're like, is there any security in this? They're like, the answer basically was no. And why are you putting this? It's all about, getting market share, first to market, getting it first out, and then I'll do that later. It's like I'll bolt it on later. you're rewarded for being first and not rewarded for being secure. So in the national strategy, whether it works or not is a whole nother discussion for another day. But there are a lot of things they plan to do to incentivize secure to market rather than first to market. Whether they're successful or not is a whole nother discussion, because it does come down to individual decisions for all of us. Would you rather buy the $20 robot or the $40 robot? If I say, hey, I can sell you this one that's a secure robot with your smartphone, and somebody else is selling you one for $20 that looks prettier, maybe flashier, are you going to buy the $20 one? So you're right, we are cheap, and first to market is a big issue. But that is in the national strategy that's recognized at the top levels of government, and they're the goal is to incentivize secure to market, not first to market. Time for maybe one or two more questions.
Dan, I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, first of all, thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that MFA will be fading out.
I didn't say that, but go ahead.
Okay. Well,
I said MFA will be facing more attacks.
More attacks.
I do not believe, so go back and watch. Those who have this at home, you can watch the video. You're going to start seeing an increase in attacks against multi-factor authentication. That's the major trend that the vendors were talking about. What I did say was, vendors are changing, in many cases, they're going away. Twitter's an example of this. They're going away from just sending you a text, because there's social media ways of trying to get, you to send that text to somebody else, and then they can use that to get access to your account and do other things. More using an authenticator app. So you're going to start seeing apps that can authenticate you and passwordless technologies. But I don't think MFAs are going away anytime soon. What I was hopefully trying to relay, and what the reports are saying, is that MFAs, the attacks against multi-factor authentication, is going to skyrocket.
Because we have seen man-in-the-middle attacks growing.
Yes.
I was just curious, did you have a prediction of what I believe you just did, talking about how they will be using relays for a second security, a new security level for
Yeah, I think you're going to start seeing, you do this right now. I mean, it happens, I use Amazon Prime at home. Some of you probably use the same thing. When I want to, I got a TV and I'm trying to authenticate it on my TV, and it basically, rather than sending me a PIN and typing in the PIN, it pops up and it says, is this you doing this? And I say, yes. That's an app that I have, that it's an authenticator app that Amazon uses to authenticate my Amazon Prime, for example. There are a variety of different technologies that will help people to do that, but basically using an app and passwordless technologies, I think you're going to start seeing more and more of that. I think there's probably some vendors next door that probably can offer some identity management alternatives around that. But I don't think MFA is going away anytime soon. People predicted the end of the password for what, decades? And we all probably think we have more passwords today than we've ever had in our lives. So I don't think MFA is going away. I just said that there's going to be more attacks against MFA. Yeah.
So a question, great content and everything. One thing I thought was interesting and missed in regards to the top, whatever list you want to look at,
Sure.
and you kind of brought up as a tangent to another conversation, but staffing or having the right skill set. And if you can give like a little elevator speech on
Sure.
that.
No, and again, I think that does show up in a lot of the reports. Most people do still believe, and we're still seeing it, shortages in cyber pros, more and more companies outsourcing cybersecurity, or maybe O word's a bad word, they call it partnering, or they call it offshoring, or anything with an O seems to be a bad word right now. So I don't but partnering and using someone else maybe to run your security or big segments of your security for you, because I don't have the staff, or I can't keep the staff to do that. So absolutely, you could have a whole series of predictions around shortages in cybersecurity staffing, and that has been, quite frankly, pretty consistent over the last several years. It is something that does show up in a number of these reports around the people side of it. Again, probably not as prominent. I think one of the things the vendors do when you look at these different vendors, again, these aren't Dan Lohrmann's, these are from the vendors, and there's a scientific way we're looking at these, if they went heavy on staffing shortages in 2020 during COVID, or they went heavy on in 2021, they may or may not focus that as much in 22 or 23. But you're absolutely right. That is certainly an ongoing challenge, and I don't see that getting better in 2023. I think it's getting worse. It continues to get worse. So yes, I mean, for all your kids out there looking for what to major in, I get these calls from parents all the time. Yes, cybersecurity will still be hot in 2030. I believe that. Some may not.
We have one more question.
Okay, last one.
Try to make it quick. On the microtrends list that you had there,
Yeah.
the trend is that they're going to be targeting healthcare
Yes.
violations.
Yep.
And when we think about that, we think about hospitals.
Yep.
But that's not the case. That's right down to your dentist, your veterinary.
Records.
That's your nursing homes.
Yep.
Anybody that's got something. But a lot of those places don't think they need to be HIPAA compliant.
Yeah.
When you talk to them. Now, what do you see with the trends with that? Because
Yeah.
they're being targeted, and they think because they're using a proprietary software that they're covered.
And again, great point. I totally 100% agree. I do think that, I was involved in actually founding the Michigan Healthcare Cybersecurity Council. I'm not on it right now, but a lot of my friends are, and it's a great group of CISOs from all over the state at different hospitals that meet together. It's all about the records. It's your individual records. Certainly agree with your point. Well stated. I think the other thing, some of the vendors go out and they say, this is people push back against this, but they say someone's going to die because of a hack at a hospital, or someone's going to die. And one report actually said that somebody did die in Germany because somebody went in and changed the health record. And then, is that murder? Somebody goes in and says, because they pull out that you're allergic to whatever, and they give you that drug, and then somebody dies because they're allergic to that drug. I mean, and there have been predictions of that does show up in some of the reports. So the question comes out, I mean, certainly it's a hot area. Healthcare, cyber attacks is a big one. Question for all of us. Again, will there be a fork in the road on something like that? So if there was a, case that was as big as the British royal family, right, that dominated the news around somebody, a health record that was hacked that led to a family dying or something. Again, I'm not predicting that. But that might change the course of the kind of thing you're talking about. Does it take an incident to get people's attention? I mean, I certainly think Colonial Pipeline changed the conversation on ransomware. I mean, most experts believe that the conversation changed dramatically around the world after the Colonial Pipeline. Now, does that solve the problem? No, we still have ransomware today. But I think this is going to be an ongoing challenge. And I think most of the industries, you're absolutely right, it's about health records and changing your health and people getting a hold of my health records and how they could misuse that or abuse that. Those are huge issues. So, hey, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. You guys can catch Dan more